I stepped off the Army transport under the pale dawn sky of the Nevada desert. It was April 1955, and the air was bone dry and cold. I followed a narrow road past guard towers and barbed wire fences to a Green Mesa test station, a top-secret nuclear facility. The convoy bumped over gravel as we approached the entrance. Soldiers in olive drab and technicians in coveralls stood by the gate. The sentry at the checkpoint barked for my orders and identification. I handed over the stack of papers: security clearance, assignment orders, fingerprints. He scrutinized them under a bright light, then saluted and motioned me through with a grunt. Inside the base, a low concrete building buzzed with fluorescent lights. A poster of radiation hazard symbols hung beside the door. We newcomers were herded into a briefing hall. Major Harris, our test coordinator, stood in front of a large map of craters. He didn't look up as he began. "Welcome to Operation Redwood. You are here to conduct a series of nuclear tests. Observe and record everything. One slip, one mistake is not allowed." He scanned the room. I caught his eye and gave my best straight look. "We start this week with Redwood 1 at Ground Zero 8. You'll use Geiger counters, dosimeters, cameras, everything. Log your readings on schedule, every step timed. Report any anomaly immediately. Understood?" His voice was low, but carried to every corner. Nodding silently, I repeated to myself, "Report anomalies immediately." Major Harris's eyes narrowed on me. He drilled further. "If anything doesn't fit, write it on Form 23R only. Those forms go to HQ later. Keep official logs clean. Questions?" None of us spoke. The message hung in the air. We expected surprises that the world wasn't meant to know. I scribbled Form 23R in my notebook, nervous. During the rest of the briefing, he walked us through safety protocols, exit routes from the bunker, and the code for medical emergencies. The baritone hum of the projector sounded unnaturally loud to me. After 2 hours of procedures, the meeting ended and we filed out with our heads full of do's and don'ts. We were then marched to the mess hall for breakfast. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, but conversation was cautious. A few men tried to joke quietly, but there was tension behind every grin. Will Romero, a sergeant from another company, known for his dry humor, handed me a mug of coffee as I sat down. "First breakfast after a briefing always tastes like metal," he whispered. I smiled weakly and took a bite of ration bread. Over coffee, he pointed at the slate on the wall. "Shot roster." It listed Day 4, Redwood 1, and some times. "They sure mean it when they say work every minute," he murmured. The schedule felt relentless. I glanced out the window, where the watchtowers cast long shadows. Time in this camp ran differently. Afterwards, I changed into coveralls and checked out my equipment at the supply bay. There was a stack of dosimeters, Geiger counters, film magazines, and logbooks waiting. I strapped a dosimeter onto my belt and verified it with the gamma source nearby. Everything clicked into place. Major Harris personally inspected our packs. He was meticulous. "Fallout can blind you if you don't cover right," he warned a technician about the radiation suits. I kept quiet, focused on tightening my boots. A corporal called, "Fall in for convoy to the range." We climbed into a truck that rumbled down a dusty road. We passed empty test towers and previous craters under the sun. The landscape was alien, endless scrub and hills. All I could think was, by this time tomorrow, I'd be watching an atomic flash light up this wasteland. That evening, after a practice run of setting up instruments, I returned to the Quonset hut. We checked each other's dosimeters for a final tally and recorded the day's readings. Will tapped my shoulder and nodded toward the night sky, now clear and full of stars. "It's quiet out here," he said softly. I felt the subtle vibration of the earth as if it were holding its breath. In the dim glow of a single bulb, I cleaned my Geiger counter and prepared for tomorrow. Lying on my bunk, I stared at the corrugated ceiling. Outside, darkness and whispering wind waited for the dawn. Sleep didn't come easily. I drifted off, haunted by the feeling that something unseen was watching from the sand.
The next morning, the camp stirred before dawn. Diesel engines rumbled, and a public address announcement crackled, drumming everyone to readiness. I joined my team at the equipment yard, where bulletin boards read, "Shot Redwood 1, Day 4. On tables, there were Geiger counters, radiation suits, and metal canisters of high-speed film. I picked up a Geiger counter and calibrated it to 0 with the control source. It clicked steadily in my hand. A faint static buzzed from a nearby radio speaker, breaking the stillness. Outside, dust devils spiraled across the flats under the rising sun. Sergeant Ellison, whose badge read Detonation Supervisor, barked orders. "Teams to stations! Delta and Echo sensors, double-check alignment!" My partner, Private Reyes, and I loaded 2 crates of film cartridges onto a cart. "Got the spectrometer ready?" he asked, tightening its connection. I nodded, my stomach knotting. The routine was clockwork by now, every step timed, every reading double-checked. Major Harris's voice crackled over the comm. "All crews to positions. Stand by for 5-minute warning." We responded in the usual terse manner. Every man performed his role without hesitation. I could almost feel the acceleration of our breaths in the quiet dawn air. By 800 hours, we were on a wind-swept ridge nearly 2 miles from ground zero. The metal frame of the tower loomed against the sky, surrounded by reinforced earthen berms. The air was still and heavy with anticipation. I placed my Geiger counter on the rocky ground and adjusted the tripod for our high-speed camera. Reyes carefully positioned a barometer beside me. A lookout had placed a windsock nearby. Suddenly, I spotted movement. A raven gliding low near the tower, then veering away at the flash of a dust plume. There was no man out there, just the bird, as if even the wildlife kept its distance. I radioed back. "Alpha 1 to base, final checks complete." A crackling reply came. "Copy that. Countdown at 10 minutes. I double-checked my own gear. Dosimeter reading 0. Spare batteries in place. Logbook open. Each piece of equipment felt heavy on my belt. We were moments away.
At 900 sharp, the ground behind me lit up. Through the bunker's leaded glass, it was like staring at a second sun. I felt myself flatten against the wall as the intense flash seared my vision. Then, almost a heartbeat later, came the sound, a thunderous, soul-rattling roar that shook every bone. The entire bunker trembled. Instruments on the panel went wild. Gauges swung into the red. "Time of blast, 8.2 seconds, I announced into the radio, voice trembling slightly. Our yield model had predicted 10 seconds for the shockwave's arrival. We'd gotten 8.2. "Yield confirmed at 16 kilotons," Ortiz replied, trying to sound steady as the rumble still echoed around us. I glanced out the window again. The mushroom cloud was already expanding, brilliant white and orange against the clear sky. It billowed upward like a monstrous flower carrying a crown of debris. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying. As the cloud rose, something caught my eye at its base. Two black silhouettes standing motionless at the blast edge. The radiance from the fireball behind them turned them into perfect dark shadows. "Ortiz, do you see that?" I whispered urgently. He turned his head, then quickly averted his eyes. When I looked back, the figures were gone. I realized they must have been shadows cast by rocks, but the sight felt wrong, impossible. I forced my eyes back to the instruments and away from the strange vision. By the time we emerged from the bunker, the blast cloud had climbed high and was beginning to drift. Engineers swarmed around, collecting samples and surveying the zone. I spotted a bulldozer carving into the still glowing earth where the tower had stood. For a moment I felt dizzy, as if awakening from a nightmare. The sky was filled with fallout particles shimmering in the light. Inside again, I filled out the official logs with the expected yield and timing. But in my hand, I quietly folded a blank Form 23R page and wrote on it, "Observed silhouettes at 0 point, shockwave 8.2s." I slipped that secret note into my pocket. 2 days later, we ran-shot Redwood 2 at dawn. We followed the same drill: calibrate, secure, retreat. The flash looked normal through the bunker glass, but something was wrong. The expected concussion wave never hit us. Ortiz peered at the horizon. "You feel that? No boom?" he said, brows furrowed. Outside the bunker, the desert remained silent except for a distant crow's caw. Engineers stared at their seismographs in disbelief. They eventually decided on a sensor glitch. Officially, the data came back normal. I filed the discrepancy quietly. Shot 2, silent signature, no shockwave observed. I tucked that note away. That night, Reyes and I sat outside under the stars comparing notes in hushed tones. "A bomb with no boom?" I whispered. He shook his head. Maybe the soil absorbed it, or maybe someone turned off the microphones, he half joked. But neither of us really believed it. The other men drank canned beer in silence. The radio at base crackled with nothing but static. We all felt it. This place was playing tricks, or worse. Yet we kept our heads down. The phrase echoed in my mind. We report anomalies immediately, but quietly. Shot Redwood 3 was scheduled 2 days after that. We were on edge. During the pre-test checks, I noticed the mushroom cloud forming a strange green tint at its base, almost glowing. "See that green?" I whispered to Ortiz, who scribbled it in his logbook. After the explosion, Private Miller bolted upright in the bunker. "There's something alive under that dirt," he shouted, eyes wild. We'd never heard that calm, gentle man yell. He stumbled out, pointing to the crater. "They're alive down there," he cried. By midnight, Miller had vanished. The official log simply stated, "Probable delirium, stepped out during cleanup." A desert dust cloud was blamed, but there was no storm. No one admitted seeing him leave. Back at camp, we all walked to our bunks in silence. Each of us carried something hidden, a folded note, a hurried sketch, a memory we'd never voice. The wind picked up outside, rattling the empty mess hall. I shook my head. Some things were better left unsaid, even to comrades. That night, I stayed up late filling out routine reports, but also adding to my private notebook. On the next Form 23R, I wrote, Shot 3, Green Cloud Base, Miller AWOL. The inked words felt heavy. We obeyed Sergeant Ellison's reminder, if you write it down, don't say it. Whatever we had stirred in those blasts was ours to record alone. The final countdown for Shot Redwood 4 felt different. Only core crew remained in the bunker. Most others had been rotated out. Major Harris, pale and silent, stood by the entry with an MP at his side. One more test and we're done, he said quietly, avoiding eye contact. I forced myself to steady my breathing. Sleep had been impossible for days, haunted by nightmares of black shapes and whispers in the night. We were all counting down to something none of us understood. At 06:47, we hit the switch. Through the green-tinted bunker glass, the flash was blinding. But immediately I knew something was terribly wrong. The fireball rippled oddly, colors swirling unnaturally like spilled oil on water. The shock wave arrived in waves like ripples on a pond, warping the air around us instead of one solid bang. Every gauge and meter seized up, all the dials spun erratically and then froze. The world fell silent. On one of the monitors, the red digital clock display momentarily reversed in time, as if it was rewinding. A deep pressure built up behind the lead walls and then shattered them. The lights went out. We were plunged into darkness thick as ink, broken only by the harsh flow of radiation meters. Ortiz gasped as a figure took shape at ground zero, a column of pure blackness rising from the crater, coiling on itself as if alive. "Jesus!" he whispered. I turned my head just in time to see it, a towering pillar of something forbidden. Jenkins snatched a flashlight and aimed it through the leaded window, illuminating that formless pillar. I couldn't tear my eyes away. It loomed over the smoldering crater, unmoving, yet breathing in some inhuman rhythm. We were too shocked to scream or even blink. Then, with a sound like a massive exhale, the figure collapsed back into nothing. The lights snapped back on, and the bunker doors slid open. Outside was chaos. The test tower was gone, reduced to a smoldering pit. Engineers staggered around, some weeping, others shouting in confusion. Major Harris emerged with a radio in hand, his face pale as ash. His voice was steady but strained as he barked orders. Secure the site. No one speaks to press or cameras. A high wire fence was being erected around the crater, men setting up spotlights and cameras on tripods aimed right at the ground. Whatever was out there was being buried under bureaucracy and secrecy now. That night, we were interrogated by intelligence officers under harsh lights. They asked about shaking furnaces and power surges and structural failures. We answered as we'd been trained, focusing on equipment and seismograph data. Our official reports blamed a cascade of technical failures. There would be no mention of Ortiz's trembling lips, of the word he mouthed when he saw it, or the way time itself had snapped. Back in our empty bunk, I pulled out the last blank Form 23R. With trembling hands, I scrawled on it, Redwood 4, Catastrophic Anomaly. time inversion and entity observed at detonation. I watched the ink blur, then quickly burn the page over a lantern. Anomalies reported, but never recorded. Some secrets were too big to ever write down. After that final day, everything was hushed up. We completed our tours and went home quietly on late-night flights. The official reports said the explosions went as expected, that equipment failures caused the damage. Any footage of the blasts was classified or destroyed. To the public, nothing unusual had happened. But I knew better. In my pocket, tucked away, was an unfiled 23R with everything we had seen. In my mind, I carried every haunted detail. Back in civilian life, I felt restless and alone. Every night I lay awake listening to the radio, half expecting to hear that distant rumble again. On quiet roads, I imagined headlights flickering in empty country lanes, like signals from the desert calling me back. A chill wind at midnight would make me shiver and remember sealed bunkers. When friends asked why I left the army, I had no real answer. I just said I'd served my time. What could I tell them? The truth was too unbelievable. Sometimes I dream of Ortiz and Miller, of the others who saw too much. They stand beside me in those dreams, silent and solemn, as if to warn me not to forget. Those dreams bleed into my days, making me question what is real. At work, I sometimes glance at coworkers and catch a flicker of movement at the corner of my eye. Is someone or something still watching? I never speak of that night, not even to close family. My silence is a kind of loyalty. I know I told you we reported every anomaly immediately, but not everything made it into official logs. Some truths were buried under the sands. The test site still stands out there, though they say it's been decommissioned. On stormy nights, I swear I hear it whispering across the dunes. The desert has always been wind and sand, but sometimes I think the earth itself remembers what we did. And if it remembers, who knows what it might have awakened.